So now at this time, I would like to introduce our speaker. Mariah Hudler received her LCSW MBA, a financial therapist in the California Bay Area who works with individuals, couples, and entrepreneurs to improve their financial health. As a therapist, she blends mental health with financial planning to provide a niche but vital therapeutic service. As a speaker, she speaks on money mindset concepts but focuses on handling relationships to money and how to move along the continuum of scarcity to abundance. We are in for a real treat. Mariah, thank you so much for joining us, and we are so looking forward to this presentation. I'm going to turn things over to you. Thank you for joining us today.
All right, thank you so much, Brittany. It's a privilege to be here speaking with everyone today. I do want to acknowledge the timeliness of this presentation in our current environment, and that things may be difficult and challenging on not only an economic level, but a personal level. And that as we have a roller coaster of feelings regarding our current economic times, I hope that this presentation will give you ways to acknowledge the challenges, but also find a way to the opportunities that lay ahead. Okay, so today I am presenting on improving an entrepreneur's financial health. The objectives of the webinar will be learn how to deal with financial stress and anxiety with a variable income, learn how to manage emotional decisions related to money, and learn how to set goals as well as identify and overcome financial roadblocks. As a financial therapist, I want to let you know that we'll be approaching these objectives through an emotional lens and model. You may be more familiar with an exterior finance model, which would be associated with tax planners, retirement planning, much more tangibles. What I do as a financial therapist focuses on the interior of finance, and that has around thoughts and emotions, a little bit more elusive, and the more dominant tends to be with the exterior of finance. But ultimately, I want you to leave this webinar with not only practical tips, but an increased awareness to this burning question that I work with my clients on a lot. Why do I make certain decisions when it comes to my finances? All right, so financial health for entrepreneurs, what is it? The overall goal for financial health is to have a balanced, comfortable relationship with money. But what does that look like? As a financial therapist, again, as a foundation of things, we look towards the past and also basically narratives that we have received throughout our younger years and our childhood. That could be, we call them unconscious beliefs, or I'll be referring to them mostly as money scripts throughout the presentation. But the unconscious beliefs that we've learned about money and being able to change those that are detrimental to one's financial health. Later in the presentation, we'll also go over some other signs of financial health, but I'll focus mostly on unconscious beliefs right now. So we're going to use Fina. She's going to be our case study, and she'll help us to explore these concepts around money scripts a little bit more deeply. So I'm going to read to you a little bit about Fina. So all you need to do right now is just relax a little bit and learn about Fina. So Fina is a 47-year-old married real estate agent who loves her job and started her realty business to make a positive impact on others, as well as to help others achieve their dreams of home ownership. She has the passion, influence, work ethic, and drive to increase her network base and referrals to be successful in her industry. Fina has wrangled with the normal negative thoughts of failure. She is well aware of the hills and valley aspect of her income. She and her partner saved and invested their own personal money to get her business up and running. Financially, Fina is getting listings and homes sold, but is unsure of where the money goes. When she sits down to look at her income and expenses, she feels overwhelmed and her heart starts to race, so she puts it off. Nonetheless, there never seems to be enough and bills go unpaid. Money is often the first thing Fina thinks about when she wakes up in the morning. She becomes stressed when a deal does not go through or closes on time. Fina believes that in order to make money, she has to spend money, especially when attracting clients. She finds she becomes agitated when her partner asks about her spending. She avoids her partner by working more, although it is causing tension between them. She tells herself the money will be there if she puts in the time or when she gets a higher price listing. Okay, and there is Fina going through all the emotions. Okay, so let's take a look at what some of the things that Fina could be experiencing. Definitely some financial anxiety. This is just very commonplace for us as humans to be experiencing in general. So it's not only today's current environment, but there is a background of economic stress that we feel as Americans. So in 2018, a survey by Northwestern Mutual reported money is the dominant source of stress at 44%, dramatically outpacing relationship stress. American Psychological Association annual survey on stress in America reports that regardless of the economic climate, money and finances have remained the top stressor since 2007. Unplanned financial emergencies and level of savings are listed as some of the highest stressors. So financial anxiety is definitely real, and it's happening right now. And there is always an underlying sense of financial stress that we may experience, and other times more acutely, like potentially right now. It has physical, emotional, and relational impacts. Fina reported that her heart starts to race when she sits down to do her planning or thinking about money. Emotionally, she has pervasive thoughts about money. It's interrupting her sleep. She thinks about it all the time. She's avoidant in some ways to being able to finish through the cycle of looking at her money, and it's starting to impact her relationship. Right, so where does financial anxiety come from? Well, as I've alluded to just briefly, it can be steeped in our family history and our money scripts or our unconscious beliefs. Some things that additional to Fina and her growing up was that she grew up in a single household. Her mother worked a lot, and her household never essentially had enough money. Her mother worked hard so Fina could be successful. And coming from that environment, she reports that that her mother would tell her to be successful was to work, and that she was working for her in order to be successful. Okay. And so these money scripts can follow us into adulthood, and they can dictate and or drive our financial behaviors. So currently she's sitting in a financial comfort zone, but yet it's like a cycle that she's not able to work through or get out of to be able to improve her financial health. It's impeding her ability to make improvements. So a little bit more about the money scripts. They are unconscious. They're internalized during usually our immature thinking of childhood. They're formed on a deep primal level and become part of our world view. They can be often incomplete, conflicting, or partial truths, and they often contain words like always, never, should. And they often go unexamined. They're reinforced and generational, and ultimately they can lead to limiting our choices in regards to advancing our financial health. So they help you, the idea of understanding and recognizing our financial health or our money scripts is that they help you gain insight into your own money belief system. I'll just take a side step right here and say that, like for me, for example, growing up, I had a money script or unconscious money beliefs as I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I attended private and secondary school where service was put ahead of actually like money, right? So service was ahead of money. One of my role models was St. Francis of Assisi, and he was a deacon who vowed poverty and would never look to money as anything of importance. So I internalized those messages going through school, After school, I went and did some international development, never made like a lot of money, returned and went to start grad school and realized that I had to pay tens of thousands of dollars to be able to help people as a profession. So it helped me to kind of stop and think at that point of, wait a minute, how do I contextualize this? Is this a good return on investment to be able to spend this money and also have a valuable return? So yes, it was, but I did have to think about it a little bit differently. I had to prioritize that where I went to work would be able to make a certain level of money so that I could earn a good living. So they're essential in being able to address and make changes to financial decision making. We'll get back to looking a little bit more at some of Fina's, and we'll all actually run through an exercise to help her to kind of look and examine some of her thoughts and feelings around that. And ultimately, they're key to shifting money mindset from scarcity to abundance. So typically, they do lie in an area that limits our beliefs, and being able to go and open our thought processes and have more feeling thoughts of abundance where there's creativity, innovation, and that there's just an endless opportunity out there for us is where we want to kind of sit. And I think we're being challenged with that very much so today, in that things have changed very rapidly for us. And we can sit and be like, this could be doom and gloom, or we could look at and say, well, what are the opportunities that lay ahead for us with this? So let's get back to Fina. We'll pull out a few of her money scripts. This is just a paragraph that I pulled to examine a little bit more of her potential money scripts. So that Fina believes that in order to make money, she has to spend money, especially when attracting clients. She finds she becomes agitated when her partner asks about her spending. She says, I work hard and I deserve to spend money how I want, is one of her scripts. She does not want to come from a sense of deprivation and being able to choose how she feels that she needs to spend money. Another one is that if I don't work hard and make a lot of money, I'm a failure. Again, some messages that could have been internalized from growing up with a mother that worked really hard to provide for her so that she can be successful in herself. And then that there's a sense of that she doesn't have enough money, that she tells herself the money will be there. She puts in the time, so working a lot, not being around for her partner, or when she gets a higher price listing. So this feeling that there is never enough out there for her, rather than focusing on the money that she does have. Okay, so I see that the audio is choppy. Try to speak more clearly. So how can we help? Can we help Fina? Yes, we can help Fina. Money scripts can be re-scripted. It depends on how the level of emotion attached to some of our scripts, but through basic exploration and awareness that we can take a look at what our scripts are. So some things that could be applicable to you, if say you wanted to do this for yourself, is to just have a chat. Sometimes I do like a money history with clients. And that's just really talking, like having a think back of like what it was for them growing up, maybe what their partner has experienced, and maybe some of the differences or nuances that they learned, the values that they picked up based on how they grew up. Another example is you could write a brief statement about what you believe about money and happiness, or money and credit cards, money and debt. And as I said before, some of the beliefs that we may have could always be tacked on with should or have or always or never. So just taking a few minutes to sit and think about and journal, or you could journal and just think about some of the beliefs that you may have growing up, and are they impeding you or are they not impeding you to reach your financial health that you like. So, and to be able to create alternative money scripts and behaviors, I'll show you an example of a common technique that we use in financial therapy. It's based on cognitive behavioral therapy, and it just examines our thoughts, feelings, and emotions regarding things. And with practice and consistent application of after examining and creating alternative behaviors or different reframing or just thinking of different ways that we can look at things, that with practice and consistent application, it's not like an easy one-off fix, but that's something that we can do over time to improve. And that can move us into a new financial status, and we'll help Fina to do that in just a second. And again, that sometimes these beliefs are sitting in limiting beliefs, and we want to move them into more of opportunity, creativity, and innovation. So one great resource that you have is through the Center for REALTOR Financial Wellness. I've actually been on the site and gone through some of the exploration awareness tools that you can use. They have a wellness checkup, and then they also have a financial journey process where you can practice your financial decision-making skills and learn how to best achieve your financial well-being. And these are free to you with your membership, and I encourage you to use them to help you in this process as well. So getting into more of the examination phase, this is what I call a money script log, right? Money script is our unconscious beliefs. But what I've done is I've taken just some of the situations that we presented in Fina's story, and I've broken them down into behavior situations, maybe the physical sensation or feeling that she was experiencing, her belief that we identified, and then a goal, like an alternative money script or an adaptive behavior that Fina could use to move her along the continuum to more of an abundance state. So the first situation is she doesn't know where her money goes, so she avoids setting up a spending plan. Some heart racing, maybe some shame associated with that. She reports that she works hard, so she deserves to spend money on what she wants, and she doesn't want to live in deprivation. So an alternative to that is if she were to say, if I follow a saving and spending plan, I can allocate commissions to marketing and advertising, as well as other categories, so I don't feel like I am chasing bills. She could buy a book or on spending plans to begin next month. Another situation that with Fina is that if she only got a higher price listing, things would be better. Some racing thoughts, she had some disrupted sleep and some exhaustion. That feeling and belief that there will never be enough money. An alternative money script or adaptive behavior is that she can look at state to herself that leading a life of abundance and authenticity and fulfillment is not about money. That she has enough money to live a rich and fulfilled life and focus more on what she can control with the things that she has. And then that she works a lot away from home, and it was impacting her relationship with her partner. Some feelings, sensations that she was feeling with that, and the belief that if she doesn't work hard and make a lot of money, she's a failure. A reframe or an alternative money script for that would be that she feels confident talking about money, and that her partner and she are a team, and they could set up a monthly money date as a way to move along that spectrum of getting into more of an abundance and phase instead of the limiting belief that was keeping her in this cycle of not being able to address any of the feelings that she was having. So just as a summary, we've been talking about money scripts can be restricted. They're not, money scripts aren't always necessarily in a scarcity, but they tend to mostly be, and that's where it can often lead to lapses in self-control, where we saw this cycle with Fina that drains cognitive resources, so this feeling of overwhelm, not knowing where to start. I meet with a lot of clients that do that. It's just so big for them. Just like that thing of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, it can seem really overwhelming. So starting small is really important. And to live in stress and can live in stress and act out of despair. Whereas we'd like to see Fina, and we helped her to think of some ways to live more in an abundance area. That's the open possibilities that she had, just the reframing, what options she had, like books, podcasts. There's so many things out there. We've got the center there for financial wellness, alternatives and creativity to help you to get kind of moving along with these things if you find yourself with some limiting beliefs. So we've moved Fina into a new financial comfort zone. She has some re-scripted money scripts. And the second thing we'll go over with the rest of the signs of financial health is that we can use systems to help her additionally reduce emotions and anxiety. And these are equally applicable to you as an independent contractor and an entrepreneur. I want to say that the approach is use of nudges and incentives theory. So when working with financial health as equal to, say, physical health, right? There's not just one way to approach physical health. There's not one way to approach financial health. But overall, we want to look at our health as a long-term lifestyle change, right? We want to just use short things, just make small changes that can ultimately lead to big changes, right? So the use of nudges, right? Just easier to break things off into small pieces and move them forward rather than completely stopping anything. So, and doing something, and then also building off of that. Like once you find once you find something that works for you, Fina could, take a look at those adaptive behaviors or things that she could do and see if they work for her, see if they not, and she can make changes to those as well. So another sign of financial health, so moving on from our unconscious money beliefs, is that living within one's business means and maintaining a positive cash flow. So right here, I'm just going to say that to reduce emotions, the use of budgets is extremely important, right? We should look and reframe that budgets are our friend, and they really help us to control, enact a sense of control over our spending and our saving. So they are a tool. They help us to control our money. They are objective and not subjective, so they're removing some of the emotion around financial decision-making, the numbers, and just being able to see them. They also give us an opportunity to analyze our numbers, what we're spending and what's coming in, and ultimately tell our money what to do. So that moves us on to, there's more resources for you at the financialwellness.realtor. They have monthly budgets, personal as well as business. And this leads us into the next sign of financial health, which is having clear financial goals and plans for meeting those goals. So what does that mean? Well, from a financial therapist perspective, it would be around prioritizing it to have like that you're using the tools of like a budgeting and spending plan, and you're looking at it monthly, right? You're updating it, you're identifying your costs, especially for a variable income. You're working your costs out per month basis, right? You know how much is going out every month, even though you may not know how much is going in every month. And by doing this, you have an idea of like how much that needs to be in there, right? So a peer recommended resource is the book, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's called Profit First by Michael Michalowicz. He uses a kind of behavioral finance technique as a way to view your money and also set it into different accounts, right? So it would mean, like say you have 100%, right? You're getting a commission check. You know that you owe taxes on any money that comes in. So you have a separate account for that and you apply a percentage to it. I'll just say for example's sake, let's do 20% into taxes. All right, so 20% of that commission check comes out straight away, goes into a tax account. And an idea to further reduce emotion surrounding it is that sometimes people will draw on and use it as like a dip-in account in case something happens or they need it, but an additional step would be to remove that account and put it in a different bank, so you're less likely to access it. Okay, so that leaves us 80% left of our commission check. One of the big things that Profit First plugs is that and it kind of sits along the abundance continuum, is that you are going to have a profit. So how do you identify that? Well, you can start small, right? You can start with just 1%, but 1% of that check goes into a separate account for profit, right? So that leaves us with 79% left between our operating expense and our income. Your income, obviously, with setting up a budget, a personal income budget, you can identify how much money that you'll need to come into, how much you'll need for income. So let's just say that's 40%. So that leaves you 39% left of that check to go into the operating expense. And even though it takes a little bit of time, but the setup of it is that eventually you're going to start seeing if your expenditures equal the amount that you're going to associate, the percentage that you associate with your operating expense. And if it doesn't match up, you have some ability to move up and down, I think, besides the taxes, how much, your percentages vary for each bucket of money, right? So this is a great approach to kind of looking at money and assigning it a job. And there's other ones that do that. I know the waterfall technique as well. You have a certain amount in your account, and then over that start spilling into other accounts or other buckets. We have the bucket things. But the great thing about doing it this way is helps you to further analyze each of the areas, right? Especially like your operating expense may be the area that needs to be most looked at. So it offers you another level of analysis. I've created this free exercise that I've uploaded, Brittany has kindly uploaded to the financialwellness.realtor site. And it is the purpose of the exercise to have you list your current expenses. I've listed pretty much as I could in terms of understanding what your set expenses are per month. And then kind of goes in line with what we were doing with the last exercises, challenging you to think of an alternative expense. So if this is the area that has the ability to fluctuate with percentages so that you can increase your income or increase your profit, this is a good way to kind of look at it. And it's about being creative and innovative about looking at different ways of allocating your money. Okay, so moving on from there kind of flows us into the next kind of financial health, which would be making financial choices related to our values. So this value system, applying a value system does a couple things. One, it gives you some space to be able to consider opportunities or consider additional spending or consider investments and say, does this fit with my values? It could be personal or it could be your business. So if you have a vision and mission statement, you can go back to your values and say, does this reflect what I want to be spending on? Also during this time, and we have a little bit of extra time to kind of really examine, some of our costs have been cut essentially because we can't utilize services or the way that we have. So looking at different ways to say, does this fit with my values, right? And that helps us to create space in between of making an emotional decision around things like, oh, yes, that sounds good. Like, no, it gives us a little bit of space to say, wait a minute, I'm just going to take a look and reflect on my budget, my analysis, and then my values and say, hey, is this a good time for this or not? Or is this something that I want to one day, like, use my profits for? And there's some other ways, to do that. And, like you know, this is such a good time to reach out to colleagues and see what they're doing, and see how they're handling things too. So using, you know, a collaborative approach to being able to work through these things. Having another sign of financial health is having active savings and retirement plans. I mean, these are almost crucial for entrepreneurs and independent contractors, right? It's just something we can't necessarily get away from. And, you know, this is such a good example of an event that can come up really quickly for us to be like, okay, an emergency savings is important. Maybe that is one of the buckets I need to prioritize starting out, or maybe I need to beef that up. And then retirement plans is the short-term pain, long-term gain. So wanting to think about not only the here and now, but to also to plan for later. And that there's, you know, potential of opportunities of diversification and thinking about different, you know, income streams that you could have along the way, and being creative about that as you progress through your business. Okay, don't have to say a lot about this, but maintaining reasonable and low debt obviously is linked to lower financial anxiety, lower financial stress. Everyone has a different risk tolerance, but using a system to identify the debt that you do have and being able to service that in times where your income is not as robust as it could be. And it's kind of finishing off with some of the signs of financial health is experiencing low levels of financial stress. So I think that this is really important for us as entrepreneurs and for independent contractors is if you're managing your financial stress or if you are working on your financial health journey, it's creating a sense of calm and neutrality when working with clients, right? So we're not necessarily looking as clients as we can wait out times like these where it may not be a financial return in a short amount of time. Right now might be very much organic marketing and cultivating relationships, and we may not see returns on those for longer periods of time. If you are in a state where you're working on your financial health and you have a lot of these things in place, you're exuding less stress, and you're also able to be more present for your clients and be able to meet them where they're at, which is important. So people can, you know, we pick up on these things, and it also makes you more at advantage to be able to help them or meet and understand what they're going through and be of service to them in that stated period where it may come back for them at another time that they may need your services. All right, so I know I covered a lot, but we covered how to deal with financial anxiety, use money scripts, which are the unconscious money beliefs, and just how to examine and explore and become aware of those, as well as how to examining them through a money scripts log, so taking our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and jotting them down. And you can do this over, you know, a few days. And just, I mean, honestly, this exercise can be applied to anything in your life. It's such a simple technique that you can use. It does take some, you know, you have to stop and think and explore and be aware. And then jot a few things down, then challenge yourself to create new mantras or read new books or open new podcasts or do some mindfulness. And then there's tons of things that you can do in that space to kind of get you through some of the things that you may be feeling about that or recognizing. So there's tons of opportunity to look at some of the things, some of our challenges that we notice about ourselves differently. And then how to manage emotions related to financial decision making. Definitely systems. We use a lot of systems in behavioral finance to reduce emotions. So helps us to create space. It makes it more objective. And we get actually more of a sense of control over it. I think the initial is that it can be very emotion laden, but once we start, you know, pulling out the numbers and making it objective, that is what I do a lot with clients. They do come feeling very overwhelmed, so I do help them to get comfortable with the numbers and accept the numbers and realize that they actually have a lot of control over these numbers and to make the changes around those. So systems are actually our friend. And then how to set goals as well as identify and overcome financial roadblocks. So just rolling back on this, practice and consistency. This isn't something that if you apply it once will make significant changes. But it's practice and consistency using nudges and incentives, right? So just wanting to turn that dial from any limited thoughts that we may have, any practices that we know that we want to change, or, if we're a little bit heavy-handed on the Amazon purchases, creating some space in between those, or leaving them in the basket, or removing our credit card. So those can be simple nudges and incentives that you can use to try to start to turn the dial or change those behaviors a little bit. Okay. So if any of this resonated for you, I encourage you to reach out to me. I do offer a 20-minute free consultation session. We do have a list of services as well. Feel free to look at my website. I'll put up the information regarding that, or follow me on social media. I post tips and articles to just generate conversation, as well as ways to kind of think differently about things, and then also some practical tips. But I really want to work together with everyone in financial health to talk more about money, to increase awareness, to explore these topics, and then ultimately if there's something that's impeding you from advancing in your financial health or making changes that you think that you want to do, I'll put up here. So feel free to contact me and set up a 20-minute consultation if you just want to learn a little bit more about what I do. Financial therapy is an emerging field. It's a very niche area right now, but there's more and more articles being written about emotions and money. And you'll see maybe more in the articles around money, just mentions about like therapy or financial therapy. So feel free. I am here and available to you. So here's my contact information. And I think we're going to go into a question and answer session next. I don't know. Brittany, are you there?
Hi, Mariah. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. That was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Really appreciate it, and I think it was very timely and helpful. So now we do have some questions in our queue. So for members who are listening in, it's not too late to submit a question. You're simply going to send a message in the chat or email us at financialwellness@nar.realtor. And please note, this webinar session, if you do have to jump off of the call, it was recorded and will be available for your review on Wednesday, May 27th. Please just visit nar.realtor/CFSW/webinars. I repeat, this webinar will be available on Wednesday, May 27th. So, Mariah, I have a question. A lot of people have been asking the book that you referenced earlier in the presentation. Can you please give that author and the title of the book name again?
Sure. Do you want me to put it in the question answer or just on air, or both?
Both. That would be great, because I think there are some people who called in onto the call and they may not have connected through their PC. So if you could provide that, that would be excellent.
Sure. The book is called Profit First, and it's by Michael Michalowicz. He actually also has a podcast. I can't remember the name of it, but if you look up Profit First in podcasts, he will show up. So he, is on this mission to help people to organize their finances as such. And I've had a lot of clients and basically just people in general speaking about it, and a lot of the kind of groups that I'm in, and that they follow it and find it very easy. Another one is You Need a Budget, and I'm not 100% sure of the author, but some of you may know it. It's also an application that on your phone that you can use or on your computer, and that there's a lot of free budgeting tools, which I forgot to mention, but like Mint and Every Dollar. Some are free, some are not. All you need is a basic Excel sheet like you guys have on the financialwellness.realtor site, and You Need a Budget has a book and stuff, and it has a following, and that's also, that's what I meant to say, a peer recommended book that people use a lot, and that gives Every Dollar a job.
That's actually really interesting. So kind of just tying into that, and I know that you'll provide a list of those resources, not only in the chat, but maybe we could also list it where we're going to put the PowerPoint presentation and the recording. Do you think that would be easier?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So for members who are listening in, what we're going to do, we'll put the list of the books that Mariah just listed as well as the authors, where the recording will be lived at, which is going to be nar.realtor/CFFW/webinar. So you can definitely also go there if you have to jump off this call. One question that we did have come in, lifestyle changes, they can be challenging, and it's not so much really just starting them, but staying consistent. What do you suggest to help stay on that straight path, especially once you've started that change?
Yeah, well, I agree that it can be very challenging. The things that you can do is obviously some of the things that were mentioned here. So you want to definitely write goals. You'll want to do like a goal setting thing or review of goals monthly or quarterly or annually so that you can see the fruits of your labor. I know one thing that my husband and I do, we meet monthly on like essentially a money date. We call it like the most romantic, but we do come together to review our assets and our liabilities. So we're able to kind of look at our goals and see what's improving, what areas are not, and then just chat about, just some of our dreams or goals or what we need to do for the next month or what changes we need to make in the interim. So I would say that that's probably the best, is just prioritizing that, putting it on your calendar. Again, another system that kind of prompts you to do something and keep it up. And then for like the general mindset is to just read, to listen, to take on new ideas, to talk about it. A lot with finances, we feel very uncomfortable talking about money, but identifying one or two people that are trusted or that are interested as well. There's new, like TED circles, there's TED Talks, there's so many different things that you can open you to just general conversations about money and goal setting and abundance.
That's a really good point. So are there any tools or resources that you use to set out like your financial map?
So I use mostly Excel spreadsheets. And yeah, I do the tracking. We do the assets and liabilities tracking. We do a budget. We do a lot of savings. So we work from that savings standpoint. That's probably our biggest bucket. And then work from everything else. But essentially, yeah, we just keep a monitoring system in place. And yeah, we're both committed to it. I think, some of the couples that I see can be on different pages around things, and that's a lot of the work that I do with them. I mean, we each come, like I said, with our own narratives, our own roots around money and our views and our thoughts. So getting on the same page can be a challenge for some couples. So, working towards that or identifying ways to do that. Therapy is one way to do that. Financial therapy is good for that as well. So, yeah, would start there.
Okay. That is actually a really good point. That brings us to our next question. You mentioned in today's webinar, someone has listened in and, they want to include or tell their significant other about the great tips that you just shared. So what are some tips and strategies that you recommend, to make sure that they're in loop of everything you've just talked about?
So I think it really starts with us and our interests, right? People tend to be defensive if we tell each other what to do, especially in relationships. And it's more about opening, listening maybe to a podcast. Hey, would you want to listen to this with me? Maybe watching, identifying like a TED Talk, and just kind of inviting them to listen or be part of something that you find very interesting. And that's kind of a good hook for people too. It's neutral. It's not like on the defense. I think money conversations can be just really challenging in general. So if you do need to have maybe more of a difficult conversation, but you want to create a time and a space where you're both in a good spot. Like sometimes some of my couples will want to meet at night, and I say, I do have an availability for that, but I have to ask, are people tired at night? Is this the best time to be speaking about money? So you kind of want to identify when is a good neutral time, or when you're relaxed to be able to have a conversation about that. But I would really encourage just leading by example and just being interested and curious about it and finding new ways and being inspired by doing things differently.
That's a really good point. No, thank you, because that can definitely be a challenge, and, you just want to make sure that you're approaching it, to your exact point, at a time when you can receive that information and be resourceful. So thank you. I do have a couple more questions, Mariah. So
Sure.
How do you recommend, that profit versus money, that income that you're getting in? Do you suggest separating them into different accounts? Just assuming that the income is just like living money, or a small profit percentage. How do you break up those accounts that you were talking about earlier?
Well, I think it's very subjective, right? So say for me, I like to use just the basic idea system of it. And if you read the book, it can be very, very detailed. I'm kind of more of a big picture, I kind of get it, this concept. So I, focus on, really it helps me to look at my operating expenses, and I would like more profit. So how can I carve out a little bit of my operating expense so I can put more of it into profit? And I just use the four basic, the taxes straight away, that just goes straight in. And sometimes, with because income is variable, I have variable income as well. I don't have a set income. Do I need to drop on income, a certain amount to be able to make sure that I have that certain amount per month to cover my bills? So it's, I think it's such an easy, simple way to look at those buckets or, accounts. And do I physically move my money? Yes, I do. But there are ways to, on You Need a Budget, that you don't have to use the different accounts. But for me, it is that extra level of actually moving the money away. And the You Need a Budget has kind of more of it, all falls in one account. But it's all split up on your budget, on the budget itself. So it's just kind of just checking in with yourself and saying what would really work better for me. If I'm a visual person, then maybe the accounts do work for you, because then that money is for this only. And if the taxes actually moving it to a separate bank, then you never see that money. You just know that it's there when you need to pay your taxes on a quarterly basis. So it's just really just checking in with you of what kind of person are you? What would benefit you the most? And that's that whole nudges incentives. Just try different things. Take on ideas and try it. And it doesn't have to be 100%, right? You may just use a combination of these things, which is essentially probably what I do more so, but I do like the behavioral finance aspects of just separating out and saying this percentage is for this.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. So what about reimbursements as well? Let's say, for example, you had an expense that had to be paid for a deal that closed, and, you know, you want to pay yourself back, should that money go into your business or would that go into yourself? This is a reimbursement for something that already had a closed deal. So if something comes in extra that you didn't have planned for that month, that's a good sign, but at that point, should it go into your business or into your personal?
Well, it depends on, I guess, if it came from your business. I mean, you could apply essentially the same percentages, right? I mean, and split it up. Or if it's that, you know, it was a portion of you had to dip into like your income to cover those expenses, you would just identify that ahead of time and be like, this much needs to go into my personal account when it comes in. And I guess that's like less of a percentage of identifying, okay, I'm going to get a reimbursement of X amount, and that is already tagged for, you know, income.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I have two more questions, and then we'll get ready to wrap up. So moving forward, what's the best way to handle hurdles or difficulties that may arise once we kind of get back to this new normal or whatever that would look like in the near future?
Well, I think this is such an opportunity to deal with the inside stuff. So this is such an opportunity right now to say, what is working for me right now that I want to continue on in the future? And like what, maybe even reflecting back and saying what wasn't working for me, and you know, what I don't want to go back to in the future. So I do have a lot of clients that are working through some of those things right now. But this working on the inside right now is like such the great thing, rather than, because we don't have a lot of control on what's going on outside of us. So really taking the moment to say, what do I want to see with myself going forward? Like, what are the values that I've really enjoyed? Like, I'm driving less, I'm spending more time at home, we're not spending as much on activities. It's almost like essentially a reset for us. It's a reset for the whole universe, essentially. So this is the time to go inward and take a look at some of the things that are going on with yourself and what thoughts, feelings, and emotion you have, whether it's related to finances or other things, because now's the opportunity to make those like either small or big changes if you are. I know a lot of you know, we're seeing a lot of more virtual. So like, do I need some work in this area? Where do I need to feel more comfortable? I know with our local area here, there's virtual tours, and now there's social distancing showings. And, you know, what does that look like? So collaborating, getting ideas, and seeing what you can do differently. So when you get back out there, because we're not going back to the same thing, obviously. We're going to go back to something slightly different. So being open to what that is and adjusting. That's being in that abundance mindset.
Good point. So this will probably be our last question, since we're coming close on time. You know, for many members, you know, what's the best way that they can serve or encourage your clients, you know, who may be going through those same thoughts or feelings during this time, you know, to really just implement those points that you mentioned earlier? What do you suggest?
Well, I think that acknowledging this time for others is essentially the most empathetic thing we can do. And that is really just being present and being such a good and active listener, asking open-ended questions and wanting to understand their journey that they're experiencing. There's essentially, you know, even myself, like, I mean, I wish I could make things 100% better for people. I mean, that's what I strive to do, but more of my job is helping, just holding space for them and listening to them. And it's essentially what you do as realtors too. You are jumping on people's journey with them. And it, you know, it may be bumpy and it may go up and down. So it's just about that you're not responsible for making them feel better. You don't always have to have the answers. You don't always have to have quitted. It's more about being open to hearing what they're saying. And sometimes people need a response so that they don't. And if you're not sure of whether they do or not, you can just simply ask them, like, you know, would you want my advice on something? Or would you want to hear a story that's, you know, relatable I'm having a relatable experience to that. So just making those connections, those empathetic connections with people, I think will go a long way right now.
Very good point. Yeah. And, it is a little challenging, but, we're here to support one another, and I think that's the biggest thing. And I love how you just ended on that positive note. So if you could, Mariah, leave us with one more key closing statement, what would that one takeaway be?
Well, I think I would take it back up to, that this wasn't only supposed to be practical tips. I know you guys love practical tips, but really what I help people to do is increase awareness, right? And it's just, we often go so unexamined. I don't want to say sheep, but sometimes it's just easier not to confront some of the things that we're feeling or some of the beliefs that we have that could be impeding us. So it's really that question is, why do I make the financial decisions that I do? So if I can just leave you with that, to just kind of ponder and use some of the techniques for exploration and awareness and then some analysis, then, I would be really happy if you guys took that little bit away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mariah. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your insight, especially on this topic. This was so timely. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm really sorry if there was audio issues.
Oh, no worries. But we'll make the recording available so that way members can tune back and listen. So again, that recording is going to be available on Wednesday, May 27th. I'm going to post up the link where you can go to view that recording. And I just also want to provide something for our members who are listening in. Make sure that you also take advantage of NAR's Right Tools Right Now resource. This is a relaunch program, and it includes reduced or no-cost tools to support you, through this challenging time. And the site includes webinars, educational resources, and timely market reports for your business. So we just want to make sure that you guys know and that you're aware that you can visit nar.realtor/Right Tools Right Now. So I just want to say to everybody who joined in, thank you so much for your time. This concludes our webinar, and as I said earlier, the recording is going to be available for your review on Wednesday, May 27th at nar.realtor/CFFW/webinars. The PowerPoint presentation, the books that Mariah listed, as well as that free document resource will be available where that recording session will live. So at the end of this session, a survey bar is going to pop up on your desktop browser. We would love to hear your feedback on today's presentation. Please leave your response. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you can attend our next Financial Source webinar on June 17th at 1 p.m. Central. Everyone, take care and be safe. Thank you so much, Mariah. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.